subscribe and, like the video. I digress. Let's get back to the issue at hand. U.S. military orders thousands more troops to the southern border.
Policies go into effect. Officials tell CNN that the U.S. military is sending thousands of additional troops to the southern U.S. border. This comes just 2 days after President Trump ordered the military to step up its presence there. About 2,200 active duty forces are already at the border as part of Joint Task Force North. They're mostly performing support roles for Customs and Border Patrol. Officials say the new arrivals will be doing much of the same, as they're not authorized to perform any sort of law enforcement role. Let's bring in Natasha Bertrand, who's at the Pentagon for us. So, Natasha, what more do we know at this point?
Yeah, Zane, so we know at this point that the U.S. military is ordering thousands of additional active duty troops to the border to augment Customs and Border Patrol activities and mission operations down there. But they're not going to be engaged in any kind of law enforcement role, because that is actually banned by a law, by a centuries-old law called Posse Comitatus, which prevents the U.S. military from being used domestically for law enforcement purposes. So they're primarily going to be, doing things like data entry, transportation of migrants around different facilities, intelligence support, as well as some additional support in air operations. But they're not going to be engaging extensively.
I know you're talking about a different topic, but at some point I think it's important to touch on the Southern halt on federal funding's agency communications that has basically put a stop on the proceedings to provide funding for scientific research. Multiple research study panels have been suddenly canceled due to the executive orders recently passed. Also, all EDI initiatives have been wiped from the funding agency websites. What is EDI initiatives? Is that a different way of saying DEI? I know that, yeah, they're taking out DEI. They're taking it out back and killing it
in the day-to-day with migrants. But still, this is significant because it does make good on President Trump's promise just earlier this week that he is going to augment the presence of the U.S. military at.
They're taking away electronic data interchange. I don't know what you're talking about.
The border. Now, as you said, there are roughly 2,200 active duty troops already at the border, and they're supported by Texas National Guard contingent there. And so what this is going to do is essentially lay the groundwork, we're told, for an even bigger military footprint to be sent in the coming weeks and months to the border. This is not, something that the president can, just in terms of ordering them to engage in law enforcement functions. This is something that the president has the authority to do under the Insurrection Act. And he has said, in an executive order issued Monday, that if within 90 days, he and the Secretary of Defense determine that the border is not under control and that more resources need to be used to control the flow of migrants across the border, then he can invoke the Insurrection Act, which would then allow the U.S. military to perform those law enforcement functions like arrests, searches, and seizures, as well as seizing drugs. And so this is something that we need to watch for. But for now, this is really just President Trump and the Department of Defense making good on their promise to augment, Customs and Border Patrol, as well as DHS more broadly, their resources at the southern border, as they have been stretched thin in recent years with the ongoing flow of migrants across the U.S.-Mexico border, Zane.
All right, Natasha Bertrand, live for us there. Thank you so much. All right, Donald Trump's new border czar says that deportation operations have actually already begun. Tom Homan told Fox News earlier that ICE agents arrested 308 serious criminals in the past 24 hours. The president says that ICE agents can now make arrests at churches and at schools, which were previously considered off limits because they are sensitive places. Julius Vargas Jones joins us live now from the U.S.-Mexican border in California, which is, of course, ground zero for the immigration battle. So, Julia, just the fact that these raids, this rounding up of undocumented immigrants, these arrests have actually already begun. Just talk us through what the reaction is where you are, especially because California is a sanctuary state.
Yeah, exactly, Zane. Look, people are scared. We're talking to folks who are saying it's fear and uncertainty. That's what's being brought here, both for people who are in the...
By the way, did you see IG automatically following JD Vance from people's accounts without them knowing? I thought it was BS, but then I looked it up and had a few people I know who had never followed him on mutuals list. No, dude, it's because JD Vance's account swaps over, just like on Twitter. You were following at VP when it was Kamala Harris or something, most likely. And then that happens with every administration. If you were following the vice presidential account, thinking you were following Kamala Harris, it swapped over to JD Vance. I mean, look, I don't know. Maybe Meta is doing that. Maybe Meta is also forcing people to follow the VP account or something. And I wouldn't put it past them at all. But I think a lot of this stuff is, POTUS account or VP accounts that people follow. And a lot of the, what is this? No, it refollows you. It's new, not the old one. Supposedly, even if you 100% were not following the VP or POTUS accounts, they make you follow them. Let's take a look. I don't even know if I follow the VP or POTUS accounts, if we're being real. But let's see. I'm not following the VP account. Instagram has not made me follow the POTUS account, nor has it made me follow the VP account. This is the Meta spokesperson statement. People were not made to automatically follow any of the official Facebook or Instagram accounts for the president, vice president, or first lady. Those accounts are managed by the White House. So with the new administration, the content on those pages changes. This is the same procedure we followed during the last presidential transition. It may take some time for follow and unfollow requests to go through as these accounts change hands. Now look at Donald Trump and JD Vance. I might have actually already followed Donald Trump, but I definitely wasn't following JD Vance. And I'm still not following JD Vance. Was Donald Trump real Donald Trump? I guess I wasn't following Donald Trump either. What is it? It's a brand new account? Yeah, I'm saying that Meta might have a policy in place where they auto follow the new POTUS account, okay, and the previous account turns into an archive account. Like, so you automatically now you automatically auto follow the brand new account, unless it's an account that gets wiped. I don't know how it works, but I could see it being two different things. We're going to talk about the DEI stuff in a second. Let's continue with this.
Immigration system. So folks who are already in the process, who have a piece of paper that says that they can stay in the United States through their immigration process, they are quite fearful at this point because they don't know what will happen. There's just been so many changes. And yes, California is a sanctuary state. It's also home to dozens of sanctuary cities. But at this point, people don't know, and officials here don't know. People who work with migrants don't know what will come of this. There's just been too much so quickly. We spoke yesterday with a family from Venezuela who came over and who said, look, yes, we got our appointment for asylum. We had our initial interview, but we don't know if this program will even be standing by the time that we get to the end of this process. And another thing that happened that I think is important to note is that these organizations along here, the southern border in California, who have been working in partnership with federal authorities like Catholic Charities, which we visited yesterday, and we spoke with the CEO, who told us, look, they're saying they're not going to release migrants to our care any longer. So it raises a lot of questions of what will happen to these people. He said to us, since 2021, once the Remain in Mexico policy was lifted and migrants started to be able to stay in the United States while they waited for their date in court, they have been key to helping about 400,000 people to get on their way in the United States to make it to their date in court. And now where will they go? Will they be held in detention centers here in the United States? Will they be dropped off in these cities across the U.S. border to be on their own, or will they be told to stay in Mexico? All of this just adding to the uncertainty, Zane, that we're feeling here at the U.S.-Mexico border.
President Donald Trump's promise of mass deportations in the U.S. is causing panic and anxiety among immigrant communities. His administration issuing new directives, including one that allows immigration authorities to arrest people near and inside places previously considered off limits, and that includes schools and churches. CNN's Ed Lavandera visited one Texas city that's now preparing for raid.
Good morning, Cactus Elementary!
Every school day at Cactus Elementary starts like this. Moments of patriotism and reflection with a high-energy dose of inspiration from Principal T.J. Funderburg. You do that every morning?
Yes, sir.
When I looked out on the student body this morning, I mean, it's quite something to think that we're in the Texas Panhandle, and that's what your student body looks like.
It's always very eye-opening to people that come here. We've got 13, 14 different languages, all these different cultures represented. And yeah, we're up here in the heart of the Texas Panhandle. Everybody think it'd be farm and ranching country and kids in cowboy hats, and we've got just about a little bit of everything.
The population in Cactus, Texas is about 3,000 people, but the diversity is staggering. There's an African restaurant, safari restaurant and halal meat. There's an Asian grocery store. There's a Mexican butcher shop. There's a Guatemalan grocery. There's also an Islamic center. What draws so many immigrants and migrants here to a community like this is the work, and it is brutal, backbreaking work. There is a meat processing plant that runs 24 hours a day. There are dairy farms that run nonstop.
You got to mention a 3-minute on Will Minnicker's episode of Doom Scroll. We'll look at this later.
These are the kinds of jobs that the United States economy and food supply rely on.
That's crazy, man. It's like the humanization of migrants, specifically migrant workers, that are the backbone of American produce, American agribusiness, and many other sectors, okay, who are hyper exploited, and their workplace conditions should be brought up to the standards of documented labor forces. It almost feels like these pieces could have been consistently talked about since, I don't know, February of 2021, when Joe Biden was the president and had promised that in his first 100 days, he was going to do wide sweeping legislation in terms of offering amnesty to a lot of these people that have been in the country for extended periods of time, for example. All this stuff that Biden ran on and was very, and definitely all these things that were definitely very popular was cast aside in the first month of the administration. And it's not an afterthought. It's not hindsight to say that it would have been devastating. It was going to become much worse. The situation was going to become much more dire if they didn't actively communicate that these people are just regular old people, okay? Just like anybody else, and in much worse conditions in general. If only this kind of framing could have been brought in by mainstream media and pushed for by the Democratic Party in general. Now, before people say, Hasan, hindsight is 2020, it wasn't hindsight in the month of February when I was saying this, routinely warning the incoming administration that if they don't do this, okay, if they don't do this at all, if the Democrats don't actually put a front-facing, pro-immigrant agenda, that inevitably Republicans would captivate the population with no counterbalance and would completely dominate the messaging on the issue of immigration. I said this in February of 2021, when right out of the gates, one of the first things the Customs and Border Patrol did under the Brandon regime was like whip Haitian migrants, okay, with their reins on horseback, invoking some of the darkest chapters of American history. Okay. And I'm sure, I mean, someone can link this. Someone can link the video. I've done so many throughout the entire administration. That wasn't Brandon. That was the Texas sheriffs, dude. It was still under the watchful gaze of the Joe Biden Democratic administration, and it was entirely against his first 100 days agenda. Please, someone sent me that video. I don't know where Little Bear is, but I need to show it to you, just so you understand where I was at in my commentary all the way back then and where we arrived at. So let's circle right on the Gen Pacific. Imagine, dude. Oh my God, every show would be like, this isn't what I'm looking for specifically. This is not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is my commentary on immigration. There's a video that we always go back to, that we always post in the chat. Not AI voice. Yes, real voice. Okay. Little Bear came in clutch as always. This border crisis narrative is incredibly annoying from the media, by the way. They are absolutely feeding into this. And they're going to cause the Democrats to behave in a totally, even in a more reactionary way than they were already going to behave. It is so incredibly manufactured. There's always been a crisis at the border. When there are humanitarian problems occurring at the border as a consequence of the conditions there, 120 degrees they have to traverse in the desert, all that sort of stuff. And then also the American government adding on to the cruelty with the way that they choose to deal with people that are crossing the border, that are seeking asylum. There is an extra crisis on the border. There's always a crisis on the border. It's never stopped. This is from March 15th, 2021. The problem is the way media covers it. You can either cover it like you do under the Trump administration, which is somewhat honestly, from a moral grandstand point of view, like an actual honest point of view, by saying this is really messed up, this is really horrible, the way that we are treating these people is absolutely ridiculous. Or you can treat it in a way where you look at the border and you say, there's a gigantic crisis happening in the border currently, and it's really bad because so many people are coming in. So many people are coming in. What are we going to do? Depending on who is in charge, we either deal with it from the point of view of reactionary garbage, claiming that this is a huge issue, not taking an actual stance on it, but just simply channeling the right-wing agitation as they have done. Just covering it as, Many Americans are concerned that the border is turning into a pile-on with hundreds of thousands of migrants coming in through the floodgates. Like, that's no different than what Fox News says. No different than what Fox News says. Yeah. Just like that, administration changes hands and CNN starts humanizing migrants. And the problem here is that the media is going to be antagonistic because they want to drive clicks. The media is going to behave in a reactionary manner. Okay? They straight up turned around and started covering the border crisis as not like something incredibly violent that the Republican Party was pushing for and the apprehension methods that were scary. But as soon as Joe Biden took over the reins, they were like, oh, there's a massive crisis. Joe Biden is letting in migrants by the millions. This is unacceptable. Okay? And at the time I said, if the Biden administration doesn't actively communicate alongside the popular mandate that they got from the election that they just won, okay, once in office, if they don't actively communicate the humanity of migrants, the Republicans are going to dominate this. The Republicans are going to dominate the conversation and just lie about it. And that's precisely what they did for 4 years. They kept hitting that button over and over again. It's not an accident that every time there is a general election or anytime there is a midterm election, that suspiciously there are caravans abound. Okay? Caravans, they're coming. You think there's only caravans coming every time an election is about to happen? Doesn't that kind of strike you as odd? It's the one thing that the Republicans love talking about all the time is that migrants are coming in and they're coming here to do crimes. They're coming here to rape your daughters. They're coming here to steal your jobs, but also simultaneously steal your welfare and also simultaneously steal your properties that you could rent. Okay? So if I can figure this out and I'm some random Twitch streamer, how can the Democratic Party not recognize that this is what was going to happen? How? That's bad politics, and it should not be rewarded. Republicans never stop. Republicans never, ever stop doing propaganda year round. They never stop campaigning. Okay? Democrats, on the other hand, barely do a decent job of campaigning to begin with. They don't. They're actually bad at campaigning. And they only do it every 4 years or every 2 years. It's very frustrating. Bro, Dems are the worst at what you describe. What do you mean? When MSNBC is saying it or whenever, the Associated Press is covering it in that way, they're doing a disservice. If they truly have a left-wing point of view in the way that like so many imply, then they have to recognize that simply offering contentious coverage on a particular matter does not mean that you're doing honest coverage on the issue. So House GOP leaders head to the southern border as Democrats ready immigration bills. So Democrats are putting forward some immigration bills right now. And the hilarity here is what Kevin McCarthy, California Republican and House Minority Leader, is decided he's going to do a news
I think Dems are okay, but not great. Debate me. What are you talking about?
Conference about the U.S.-Mexico border policy outside the Capitol on Thursday, or did one, and has decided to do a field trip to the border. Remember, these guys are the same guys that laughed at AOC when she went to the border camps.
Anyway, my point is, this was all foreseeable, and that's precisely what happened. Okay? And I never stopped talking about this stuff. I never stopped covering this stuff. But the issue is the Democrats never actively communicated the humanity of migrants. The Democrats never took any sort of actionable legislation that they promised they were going to go after. And here we are. 4 years of unimaginably slanted right-wing propaganda that is just filled to the brim with lies about migrants doing crimes, when the exact opposite is true, that undocumented and documented migrants are responsible for significantly less crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens are. Okay? And yet, if you ask the average American, they literally think undocumented migrants are doing incredible amounts of crimes. This is a crisis of misinformation, and the Democrats played a significant role in allowing this crisis of communication to manifest by not actively positioning themselves against the Republican Party. And they did this when they had all the power. And here we are. Now, the sentiment from the public has broadly swung in the worst direction possible. In a nation comprised entirely of immigrants and also descendants of slaves and descendants of those who we did not completely genocide, okay, but overwhelming majority being descendants of migrants that came here from all around the world, Americans
are officially the most anti-immigrant they've ever been throughout any point in American history. Okay? European style anti-immigrant sentiment is now very commonplace in this country. It's crazy. What is your source? Trust me, bro. In terms of what? The migrant crime thing that I just said. My source is the Customs and Border Patrol. My source is Department of Homeland Security. There's also numerous studies that have been conducted on this as well in Texas jails and all around the country, as a matter of fact, that show time and time again that undocumented migrants are responsible for less crime per capita than documented natural-born U.S. citizens. You can look up the crime data yourself if you don't believe me. I mean, I've shown it a million times over, so I'm not going to do that right now. But my YouTube videos are almost always my YouTube videos are edited after the fact with the corresponding data points. If you wanna fact check me, you can do so. But then also, I have probably upwards of 200, 300 videos talking extensively on the subject matter on my YouTube channel. What should the Democrats campaign on? Immigration on humanitarian grounds. Let them in however they want. What would be a popular message that they should go on? Great question. Democrats should actually actively communicate that this is a nation comprised of migrants and do this, show this reality over and over again, that these guys, the real solution to this issue is to actually document and process these people so they can, one, get amnesty as long as they have not done any heinous crimes or whatever, right? And then be allowed to work in the workplace with the proper modes of legal restitution if they are harmed. You can showcase examples of historically important immigrants in this country that have greatly advanced technology. You can show current examples of immigrants that are incredibly important to the American agribusiness or construction or numerous other sectors where migrants are basically working, both documented and undocumented. Migrants are basically working away from your gaze, but they're still working to keep this entire thing together.
On every day. It's also the kind of work that only immigrants, by and large, are willing to do. There are towns like Cactus, Texas, all over the country. And with President Donald Trump promising to carry out mass deportations, a sense of fear and uncertainty looms over these streets.
What are you hearing specifically from people?
They're scared. They don't know if they're gonna be able to stay here. A lot of them have been here for decades. They've built their lives here. Their kids are here. Everyone they know is here.
Elizabeth Oliveros grew up in Cactus, the daughter of immigrants who became citizens and earned their living working in the city's meat processing plant. She went away to college, became a lawyer, and moved back to Cactus to work as an immigration attorney.
If there were to be mass deportations here in this city, what would happen to it?
It'd be quite empty. I think there's a lot of people here that don't have status, that keep a lot of the businesses, the smaller businesses around here running. So if immigrants leave, I don't know where they're gonna find workers as hardworking as some of the immigrants.
As we walked the streets of Cactus, it was clear.
But you countries that were pro-immigration in like 2014 are now super reactionary too. I feel like there's just inherently a right-wing swing when you get an influx of immigration. I don't know what you can do about it. Noam Chomsky famously talked about this with respect to Sweden, that the right-wing shift against refugees came before refugees even started coming into Sweden. It actually predates refugees coming into Sweden. It started not because refugees were coming into Sweden. It started because austerity measures were kicking in. And this is the classic phenomena all around the Western world. Okay? You cut back with austerity measures, the social safety nets that people took for granted throughout their entire lives. Okay? You remove all semblance of hope that they can have a better future than the one that the previous generation had. Okay? Everything starts sucking, basically. All the public transit is no longer as good because it's underfunded. Public education is no longer good because it's underfunded. Okay? The reason why a lot of the governments in Western liberal capitalist nations, in Europe, for example, do this is because they want to implement privatization measures. But you can't just privatize it overnight. A lot of people would revolt against that sort of thing. So the way to do that is a long and convoluted, sometimes complicated process of crippling the structures that exist and then presenting privatization as the only option going forward, and then presenting it as a tax cut as well. This is the Reagan-style neoliberalism that took place in the United States of America and obviously by Thatcher in the UK as well. And it has made its way to some of the most supposedly resilient social democratic governments in even Nordic nations now. Okay? It's never about migrants coming in, and it's almost always about the fact that people's material conditions are getting worse and they're angry, and right-wing parties will often redirect that anger, just like we do here in the United States, at marginalized people, at people that have less than them, the poor, homeless, the infirm, but also, of course, in Europe, refugees. This is virtually a universal way to approach politics from the right. Constantly engage in cost-cutting initiatives and then justify tax cuts that way, starving the beast, if you will. All of the social safety nets are crippled. They no longer can cover the growing population that has, and then an aging population, especially in developed nations that have even more needs, right? And in that process, when people get angry, use that anger and resentment to further beef up your support by claiming that the anger should be directed back at the newcomers that don't look like you, that might not even speak your language, that are scary and dangerous, that actually are doing crimes all the time, okay? And that's precisely what has happened in many other parts of Western Europe especially, and that's what's happening in America as well. Look no further than the media story cycle that took place in Springfield, Ohio. This is a direct example of what happened. Like, it was so perfectly captured in that little sliver of time, right? Springfield, Ohio, a town that has been completely gutted by neoliberalism, manufacturing moved away, people are becoming poorer and poorer, the exact same issues that American workers face anywhere around the country, they're certainly facing in Springfield, Ohio. Manufacturing still has needs, right? The manufacturing and the jobs that still exist need working hands, okay? Haitians that now have temporary protected status will go to Springfield, Ohio. Once a couple Haitians with temporary protected status go there, they're like, oh, there's a lot of jobs here. So a bunch more come, okay? They start working and revitalizing the economy of the town, just like undocumented and documented migrants had done in places like Hazleton in Pennsylvania, completely revitalizing the town's economy, okay? But the people that already were there, the people that already lived there, are angry and resentful. They feel like these guys cut the line. They feel like they're getting a better shake. They feel like they're getting a better a deal than they did, that the government has undermined them. If you listen to the people in Springfield, Ohio, so much of the anger and frustration was born out of their social safety nets withering away, perishing, and them thinking that those social safety nets went away and they no longer get the same service from like the welfare the welfare office in time, in a reasonable manner, because there's too many Haitians in line in front of them, right? The real problem in that situation is that Springfield, Ohio did not have their needs met, basically. They didn't have enough finances to make up for the extra people that came into the offices. So if you don't solve that problem, a competent government is supposed to solve that problem. They're supposed to say, okay, we need more translators, for example. We need to figure out what will make this process more efficient so people don't wait in line all day, every day to get their welfare check, right? But they didn't do that because they never do that. The American government never does that, okay? So the people are left thinking these scary foreigners who are black that came into this town are actually taking not only the jobs that I could have been doing, but also on top of that, they're taking away my welfare. All right. They're in America, though, speak English. It's so funny to say this about Haitian people who also do have the capacity to speak English. But on top of that, they literally speak more languages than you, dumb fuck. What are you talking about? That's so funny to be like, oh, you came to America, speak English. These guys are refugees with temporary protected status coming in from a country that we have destroyed, by the way, okay, actively. And many Republicans remember that we actively destroyed this country because Hillary Clinton played a role in the destruction of Haiti, at least in contemporary Haitian history. And that's precisely the reason why they used to love talking about how the Democrats ruined Haiti. Hillary Clinton ruined Haiti. But they forgot about that when the Haitians are eating, cats and dog stuff was popping off. Anyway, Haitians do usually know both French and English. Exactly. So my point is, Springfield, Ohio was a perfect example of people that recognized that their material conditions were worse, that their social safety nets were not expanding and keeping up with the needs of the population that was getting poorer and poorer. And then they just redirected that anger and frustration to people that were coming into the town. That's it. That's a great example. Now, am I silly enough to suggest that if all of these people's needs were met, that there would be no racism? Of course not. There would still be plenty of people who were like, I still don't want black people in my neighborhood. Okay. Of course. But a big chunk of the population would not be so angry and so resentful about their own circumstances that they would also jump on the hatred train. That's it. Politics is about managing, politics is in many instances about managing the broadest subsect of society and their attitudes, okay? And people are very malleable. You can convince people that their neighbors are not evil. But in order to do so, you have to also make sure that their needs are met.
That most residents, regardless of their immigration status, didn't want to speak with us on camera, and especially didn't want to talk about President Trump's deportation dreams.
I don't like politics. I don't like.
The fear among many in this town and other agricultural communities across the country is that vital food production would be paralyzed and communities torn apart. The meat processing plant here says it only hires people authorized to work. Under different management in 2006, the plant was raided by immigration authorities. About 300 people suspected of identity theft or being in the country illegally were detained, many of them deported. Elizabeth Oliveros remembers the day clearly.
I was in elementary school, and I remember they had to keep us because they didn't know how many of us, our parents were gone, and a lot of my friends.
Hatred is like alcohol. It makes you feel better temporarily, but it doesn't improve your situation. It enables you to do horrible things, and it's more socially acceptable when you do it as a group instead of alone. That's a cool quote.
Their parents were gone.
Wow.
They got deported.
9.
The children at Cactus Elementary are mostly oblivious to the political storms brewing outside.
Yeah, a lot of those companies self-report themselves to ICE, by the way. At least, the famous case that I always bring up is the Purdue Chicken Factory. The Purdue Chicken Factory that had a lot of issues with harassment on the assembly line and were refusing to engage with back pay. So they were basically stealing from the already hyper-exploited undocumented migrants that they had brought to that area, okay? Knowing full well that they were undocumented migrants, like they actively hired them, okay? And then when it became too problematic that these workers were actually looking for, their wages to be paid back to them, the company realized that calling ICE on its own facility and then paying a minor penalty for hiring undocumented migrants would be far better than simply paying the undocumented migrants what they actually had earned. So they did that. They called ICE and they got a slap on the wrist for hiring undocumented migrants, as is the law. And then they turned around and went back to the same neighborhoods to hire a new crop of undocumented migrants. And they put them directly in the same trailer parks that they had set up. This is a part of the business strategy in the United States of America, okay?
These school walls. Principal TJ Funderburg is bracing for whatever comes next.
It's just the unknown that scares me to death.
He says as many as half the kids in the school could have undocumented family members. These are the kinds of places where the reality of mass deportations could play out.
To the people who are going to be making these decisions about deportations, whether it's mass deportation.
If you can find the Fast Food Nation Richard Linklater cycle, that would be fantastic. If there's like a brief cycle that we can use as a summarization of that.
Just broad or targeted. What's your message to them?
I mean, come talk to me. come meet these kids. I know there has to be rules, there has to be checks, there has to be balances, but It can't just be paper. This community of people that have come together, that are here now from all these different countries, all these different places, we can do amazing things.
We're going to get more now on President Trump's latest moves. There are many, and we turn to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, for more on that. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Rebecca. Well, President Trump is moving swiftly and aggressively to enact his agenda, including his promised crackdown on immigration. But this morning, his efforts are already being challenged in court.
This next order relates to the definition of birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment of the United States.
One of President Trump's executive orders will face its first legal test tomorrow. A judge in Seattle considering a temporary restraining order against Trump's directive ending birthright citizenship, which is protected under the 14th Amendment, and declares that any person born on U.S. soil is an American citizen. 22 states from Connecticut to California have now filed lawsuits to block the move, estimating that some 150,000 children would be impacted each year, born disenfranchised.
I have one message for President Trump. I'll see you in court.
Trump has promised historic mass deportations, his administration revoking a policy that barred arrests in sensitive areas like schools and churches.
They're pretty scared. Lots of questions about, are they safe here at school? Are they safe riding a school bus? Can they be just walking down the street and picked up? Lots and lots of fear.
Denver schools are now instructing staff on what steps to take if they're contacted by agents about a student. And at Washington's National Cathedral yesterday, with Trump there in the pews, Mary Ann Buddy, the Bishop of Washington, confronting him on his immigration crackdown.
The people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors.
Making a plea to the president.
I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here.
I listened to this speech. It's actually pretty good. Like, I mean, it's not the intended target of the message is not going to reach that target, obviously. But it's actually pretty good. It's not like, it's not like lib shit or whatever. It's actually pretty solid. And we'll cover that in a second. Hold on.
Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land.
But that didn't sit well with the president, overnight calling the bishop a radical left hardline Trump hater, saying her statements were inappropriate. And the president continues to dismantle.
Yeah. Fake Christians, when they see an actual Christian push for, Christianity. Like, dude, American Christians, when they actually face a real Christian message, go, oh, what is this woke nonsense? Okay. Oh, what is this woke DEI commie nonsense? So that's what I'm going to talk about as well. Okay. I'm gonna get to that right now. So a couple things took place here. Number one, I want to show you during the sermon, I want to show you Trump's and J.D. Vance's reactions.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families.
Come on, JD. I thought JD was a real Christian, a real born again Catholic. What happened? You don't like it? You don't like it when someone is preaching to you about, like, some of the best tenets, some of the most consistently good tenets of religion, which is like, be kind to your neighbor, turn the other cheek, that sort of stuff is so funny, man. These guys hate quote unquote Christians when you hear about some of the good stuff in religion. Immediately are like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean be kind to your neighbor? Well, I'm sorry, love thy neighbor? Not on my watch, brother. I swear to God, if Jesus came back to earth, if Jesus Christ came back to earth and he was, like, unfortunately born in, like, Texas, okay, they would kill him with hammers. Okay, the evangelicals would capture him and beat him to death with hammers. Okay? They would literally just be like, oh, we should crucify this asshole. What is this? What is this piece of shit talking about? Curing, feeding the hungry and curing the lepers? Get the out of here, dude. How about we don't do that? Okay? Yeah, what is this woke commie nonsense you're talking about? Jesus. What is this woke Mexican style communism you're talking about, Jesus? Come over here, boy.
Some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens.
They're so uncomfortable. They're like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear about the humanity of the people that I have actively campaigned to kill, okay? I don't like this. I don't like this one bit.
Or have the proper documentation. But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples.
So they hated that. And I love that Representative Mike Collins, okay, proudly serving Georgia 10, said the person giving this sermon should be added to the deportation list. Brother, that is so insane. Like what? How do you not realize you are a villain, man? Goddamn villain, dude. Like, what is going on? What is happening? This guy is talking about an American pastor giving a sermon on, some of the decent tenets of Christianity. And this guy's like, I don't want to, what are you talking about? You should be killed. Jail or deportation for you immediately. Excuse me. It's psychotic. Yeah. Christians, when you tell them to love thy neighbor, actual Christian stuff. It's just so incredibly cooked, dude. It's so unimaginably cooked. Anyway, here's what Donald Trump said about the woke DEI pastor. And here's how, for the record, just understand, Mike Collins' take about deporting this person got 43,000 likes. Okay? And N Wokeness' tweet celebrating Trump's insane ramblings of the pastor got 166,000 likes. The so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service on Tuesday morning was a radical left-wing hardline Trump hater. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. Now, I need to say something here. There has never been a moment. Why are people saying T? Why is everybody spamming T? Now everyone's spamming it. Oh, because he said it in the end. Okay. Is that his call sign now? Hey, it's Big T coming at you. Okay. Dude, no. Hold on. I'm not done with this. Because the thing that I find very funny about this is a Republican president who hugs and kisses the Bible, okay, who won big with the evangelicals, talking about how this person brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. Dude, if churches were not allowed to be political, the Republican Party would never win an election ever again. Okay? What are you talking about? Once again, it's the hypocrisy baiting doesn't work, okay? Because these guys are just straight up stating what they mean. They're saying it's only political if the church is actually abiding by religious doctrine and telling you to love thy neighbor. Okay? That's political. If the evangelical church sermon revolves around killing trans people, okay, and then, voting for our God, King, Savior, Donald Trump, then that's not political. That's not political at all. That's not politics. That's good. That's the only type of politics that should be allowed. You understand? It is insane to state this. Anyway, she was nasty in tone and not compelling or smart. She failed to mention the large number of illegal migrants that came into our country and killed people. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Like, the expectation from Trump is, no, that's the only allowed sermon, okay? That's the only thing you're allowed to say in a sermon. How dare you not say that non-citizens were responsible for 29 murders in the fiscal year 2024. That's what he wants her to say. He is just straight up the Antichrist, dude. Straight up. Like, what was the expectation that he just sits in church and the pastor is like, I hate immigrants, man. I hate them. We need to deport them all. Thank you for our Lord and Savior, Donald Trump, God King Trump. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please kill all of the Guatemalans, please. Amen. The church has gone woke, folks. Many were deposited from jails and mental institutions. He's like, why is this woke pastor not just repeating a Trump rally, repeating some of my finest lies from the Trump rally? How dare this pastor actually go against me? This is some straight up monarch shit, dude. Like, this is history book stuff, okay? This is just literally the king being like, excuse me, I was ordained by God. Who the hell do you think you're talking to? This kind of speech is not allowed. It is a giant crime wave that is taking place in the USA. Apart from her inappropriate statements, the service was a very boring and uninspiring one. She is not very good at her job. She and her church owe the public an apology. And to cap it off, T. Yeah. And of course, predictably, people are just like, let's get one thing straight. This is not a minister of God, and her church, in air quotes, is not a Christian church. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Thank you. Thank you, Donald Trump. Thank you, my Lord and Savior, Donald Trump. Fantastic stuff from Donald Trump. And also fantastic stuff from Representative Mike Collins, who wants to deport this person who apparently was born in the state of New Jersey. So I guess they're trying to deport her back to New Jersey. Anyway, here was her response on CNN.
And your tone there, so serious and genuine. You see him, he's stone-faced, he then looks down, but he's listening to every word you say. As you made that personal plea to him, what were you looking at him in that moment? What kind of response were you perhaps hoping for in that moment?
I was looking at the president because I was speaking directly to him. I was also, frankly, as you do in every sermon, speaking to everyone who was listening through that one-on-one conversation with the president, reminding us all that in the people that are frightened in our country, the two groups of people that I mentioned are our fellow human beings, and that they have been portrayed in all throughout the political campaign in the harshest of lights. That I wanted to counter as gently as I could with a reminder of their humanity and their place in our wider community. And I was speaking to the president because I felt that he has this moment now where he feels charged and empowered to do what he feels called to do. And I wanted to say, you know, there is room for mercy. There's room for a broader compassion. We don't need to portray with a broad cloth in the harshest of terms some of the most vulnerable people in our society who are, in fact, our neighbors, our friends, our children, our friends' children, and so forth.
So you spoke, I like how you use the word gently, because it was gentle. I mean, it was intense and passionate, but yet it was gentle. It was not ugly or confrontational. Wouldn't expect it to be, but you know, these are hard things to talk about in that context. You spoke obviously about undocumented.
Nothing pisses off conservative Christians more than like a real ass Christian. Okay, like a pastor, a bishop that abides by, you know, the good things in the Bible. Nothing pisses them off. That's why they also hated Jimmy Carter too, right? Jimmy Carter as president did a whole bunch of awful stuff, but I have always maintained the position that, like, Jimmy Carter, I think, was spiritually a very frustrating person for a lot of evangelical Christians who hated the fact that he was doing the Christ-like shit, you know, the stuff that you're supposed to do if you're a Christian, you know, build houses, help feed the hungry. Like, it's just so frustrating to them. It's kind of like the way the Democratic Party despises the likes of Bernie Sanders, because, like, Bernie Sanders shows the rest of the population of Democratic voters like how you could be a competent and progressive leader. You know, they hate that. They're like, whoa, you're not supposed to actually want to walk the walk. You're supposed to just talk the talk, you know, and then do nothing. It's the same thing. It just like kind of exposes them as the frauds that they are. So they just despise it. They hate that. They absolutely despise a Christian person who actually abides by the good standards set forth in religious doctrine. Okay.
Migrants, also the LGBT community, the two communities you're talking about. I wanted to play a little bit more of what you said, and also, again, the president's reaction at that moment.
There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. The vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away.
What made you decide to say all that?
Well, these are the people that I know. These are not abstract people for me. These are actual people that I know. So I wanted to speak on their behalf. I wanted to present a vision of what unity can look like in this country that is transcending of differences and viewpoints and acknowledging our common humanity. Yes. I wanted to speak in such a way that reflected that dignity and respect, but I also wanted...
Disgusting. Woke nonsense. How dare you? Christianity is supposed to be about killing thy neighbor if I suspect thy neighbor of being Guatemalan, okay? That's what Christianity is about. Excuse me, what the hell are you talking about? Evangelical Christians operate in the exact way that Reddit atheists claim Christians are like all the time. They operate in the cartoonishly evil, villainous ways in which Reddit atheists, like militant atheists, depict them as all the time, like all day, every day. They're like, whoa, what do you mean? What do you mean about love thy neighbor? How dare you? I'm not loving anybody except for Donald Trump, my Lord and Savior. Fuck you.
To bring into that space the real humanity of the people of
American Christianity is satanic. It's prosperity gospel is such an obvious satanic interpretation of Christianity. It is hilarious to me. Okay. It is like the most evil thing that masquerades as being godly. It is crazy. And it's the most popular form of Christianity in America. It is nutty to me. What do you mean a rich man has the same likelihood of getting into heaven that a camel does through the eye of a needle? That's stupid gay shit. That's woke DEI. Sounds like Marxism to me. F you. How dare you say shit like that? Heaven is woke now. Anyway.
That I was referencing.
What is this? This is funny. Coming from a Christian household, we went to the same church my whole life. When I turned 18, my pastor gave a positive stance on abortion and started a clinic to aid immigrants in southern Arizona, and my family left the church. That's amazing. Nope. They just noped. They pieced out of God, dude. Hasan, Republican, coming out today? What do you mean? Yeah. The house of God has gone woke, folks. Bishop. We need to put an end to this nonsense, okay? The liberal activist, by the way, here's Colin Rugg. The liberal activist bishop who told Trump to show mercy to LGBT kids says she called out the president because it was her responsibility to counter him. Your responsibility is not to turn a sermon into a political debate. Wait, what? Dude, these people have not gone to any churches, right? Because I've been inside of churches, okay? I've been inside of churches. Let me tell you, there is not a single church that does not engage in political commentary. It's either political commentary like this one, okay? And there are plenty of wonderful churches that do this, okay? Or if you go to if you want to hear infinitely more radical commentary, go to a black church, specifically African Methodist Church. The African Methodist Church I went to in LA was like all about how, all about fuck the government. Any church that presents liberation and preaches liberation theology will obviously always have some incredibly radical and awesome takes as well. Jeremiah Wright comes to mind. But the rest of the churches, the overwhelming majority of churches, as a matter of fact, in the United States of America, are unimaginably right-wing. and incredibly political. There's so many MAGA pastors. One of them that was at the inauguration even did a rug pull. She was given a great honor today, a chance to unify America around a Christian message at the dawn of a new administration. Instead, she disgraced herself with a lecture you'd hear on CNN or an episode of The View. What an embarrassment. Dude, they can't understand that is a unifying Christian message. Like, it does not read in the same vein for them. They're so bludgeoned in the head, both literally and figuratively, with right-wing reactionary propaganda, that like a person saying it's godly and Christian-like to love thy neighbor is seen as a woke message that has no place in the church. It's the Bible. That's in the Bible. God damn America. That's in the Bible. Oh my God. I'm losing my mind. Here, all right, well.
Where governments lie, God does not lie. Where governments change, God does not change. And I'm through now. But let me leave you with one more thing. Governments fail. The government in this text, comprised of Caesar, Quirinius, Pontius Pilate, Pontius Pilate. The Roman government failed. The British government used to rule from east to west. The British government had a Union Jack. She colonized Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and Hong Kong. Her navies ruled the 7 seas all the way down to the tip of Argentina in the Falklands. But the British government failed. The Russian government failed. The Japanese government failed. The German government failed. And the United States of America government, when it came to treating her citizens of Indian descent fairly, she failed. She put them on reservations. When it came to treating her citizens of Japanese descent fairly, she failed. She put them in internment prison camps. When it came to treating the citizens of African descent fairly, America failed. She put them in chains. The government put them on slave quarters, put them on auction blocks, put them in cotton fields, put them in inferior schools, put them in substandard housing, put them in scientific experiments, put them in the lowest paying jobs, put them outside the equal protection of the law, kept them out of their racist bastions of higher education, and locked them into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America? No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating her citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
I love that. It's one of my favorite takes of all time. Straight up. That was Obama's pastor, by the way. And because of that, obviously the Republicans immediately went after Obama and were like, Obama is the Antichrist who hates America, all this stuff. And Obama had to, of course, no longer associate himself with Jeremiah Wright, and he canceled him. And of course, this is the Boondocks, famous Boondocks clip.
Motherfuck America, motherfuck America's mother, motherfuck America's daddy, America can eat a dick, America can lick the balls.
This is a hilarious, no notes, you know? Not even paraphrasing. I mean, basically the same exact one. Basically the same exact thing he said. Anyway, so yeah. That's the case right there. All right. So the notion that like obviously these guys or churches are supposed to be apolitical is a very funny one coming from the Republican Party. But of course, as is the case with reactionary dipshits, all the way from the silliness that comes from the wokeness ruined video game right-wing political commentators, all the way to the top of the party ticket, the president. Politics is when woke. Politics is not when right-wing politics is happening. That's normal. That's common sense. Okay, that's why video games like Call of Duty are not political, but video games where there's a woman in it are political. Okay, just remember that. Let's hear what the Fox News, Fox and Friends has to say about this woke gay ass bishop.
Yesterday, the presidential party and members of Congress and whatnot the hoi polloi of Washington for the most part, went up to Washington's National Cathedral for a national prayer event. And there at the lectern was Bishop Marianne Egger-Bood, and she gave a sermon that, you know, it's described as a sermon, but really it was a lecture where she told the new president, go easy on migrants and refugees and members of the LGBTQ community. If you missed it, it's gotten a lot of support in some quarters and a lot of criticism. Here she is.
I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families. Some who fear.
Dude, JD Vance's face here is so gross. He's like, oh, I can't believe I'm getting lectured at a sermon. What are you, a preacher? What am I, sitting in a church pew? What is this, a sermon? What the hell's going on here? Oh, that's awesome. I know I didn't cover this yesterday, but it is so funny how angry this got Republicans, dude. And how angry they got in the funniest ways possible.
For their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals.
Oh my God! It's always good to learn. What was that, John, or was that Paul?
I don't know. She didn't go through scripture. Okay,
Right.
She gave a political speech.
Absolutely.
And as someone that comes from generations of preachers, I would have walked out. I commend the president for being graceful, but I'm JD Vance. I'm looking crazy. Like, what is she talking about doing a sermon? I don't think it was appropriate time. If you had something to say to the president that may be a little political, if you wanted to talk about the president exercising mercy, then you could have asked for the president for a few minutes of his time. It's a
Dude, this is amazing. Dude, yeah, wait till they find out about this gay ass Jesus guy, okay? Lame ass, communist ass, brown dude who was, you know, preaching very similar things, doing very similar things, you know? Wait till you get a load of this Jesus dude, bro. He will be pissed, okay? What are they? I don't understand. Like, do they just rewrite the Bible in evangelical churches? Like, what's going on? I actually don't. I legitimately don't know, because I don't really. I'm not a very religious person in general, and I obviously am not Christian either. Is it just like made up stuff? Like, what's happening? You open the Donald Trump Bible at your the Southern Baptist Church, and in it is like, you should actually kill poor people, and to be rich is to be glorious. Deng Xiaoping. Is that what's going on? Like, there's just no takeaway. There's no positive takeaways from their Bible, I guess. I mean, there's like hundreds of different versions, so yeah. I mean, I know, but like, the basic tenets are supposed to still be there. Love thy neighbor is a basic tenet, okay? It is a basic tenet. It's not like an advanced level Bible course. That's like Bible 101, right? That's Christianity 101. If you couldn't figure that out, I don't know what to tell you. Like, what are you looking at? What the are you reading? Are you reading it all? You probably don't know how to read because you were homeschooled, I assume. But like, this is not like really difficult to comprehend stuff. This is not difficult. This is just like super simple stuff. Okay. Leviticus 19:34. When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong unless he ain't from around here, in parentheses. The stranger who sojourns with you shall be to you as the native among you, on a reserve far away, in parentheses. You shall love him as yourself. If you are a gay lib unless you are a gay lib who hates freedom, or in which case you shouldn't. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt, which was, in parentheses, which was filled with rapists and illegals. I just don't get it. As someone who grew up with this, my parents are MAGA evangelicals. What they do is insidious. They take the verses they deem acceptable and create sermons around it. Most don't actually read the Bible and rely entirely on what the preacher is telling them. And even if they do read the Bible themselves, they somehow twist it to fit their narrative in it. You know what's really crazy about this? What you're describing is the historical interpretation of Christianity in the original Latin, as a matter of fact. The Bible was quite inaccessible to the regular peasant folk who also believed in it. And you know what solved that problem? The printing press. What are we doing? We have literally devolved back to the Dark Ages. What the It's crazy. It is crazy. I thought we had advanced past this point where people could be like, I don't know if what this preacher is saying is correct about me potentially going to heaven if I give him enough money. Because it says here that there's a lot of good stuff in here that I actually don't agree with the priest's interpretation of. I thought that's how it happened in the most reductive way possible. How the did we get back to a place where information is readily accessible